What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be talking about this predictive policing, this pre-crime AI software that is rolling out across the internet right now in response to that recent Pew Pew school event the other day. Now, this is something that has been building up for a while now, and in fact, during the last administration of the current president, he had mentioned that we need to go after the guns, we need to go after and do red flag laws, surveillance, things like that for safer cities, and that people could go to court later, take the guns first. I remember that. I'm bringing it up, not trying to make this political, but I think the facts matter because we are seeing this administration head, in my personal opinion, towards a direct mass surveillance, AI analysis, predictive policing solutions for just about everything. And nothing is beyond critique. So while this isn't really a political channel, it's important to talk about these things, to document them, to actually see how these things progress. So this Gideon AI software, what's it actually going to do? Well, in order to, as they say, prevent school shootings, what they're going to do is they're going to be scanning all social media, all message boards that they have available, chat rooms as well. They even mention a list right here, like Reddit. So they're going to be scanning all conversations in Reddit, Discord, gaming chat rooms. We know a lot of gamers can be, sometimes joke around or sometimes say offensive things. It just makes you wonder, what's the actual marker? What's the red line? How does it analyze what is determined as a possible future threat? Because here's the thing about predictive pre-crime stuff. There's no due process. You don't actually have a hearing. And as we're seeing with people, even the homeless, now being involuntarily committed, how much farther away are we from predictive policing pre-crime getting someone involuntarily committed? This is actually something that is actually really worth talking about. Because while homelessness is not supposedly a crime, we're seeing people being involuntarily committed. And just realize, this is not me saying that I support all of the troubles that come with homelessness, the safety concerns that come with it. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm looking at everyone's rights, and I'm realizing that the way things happen are slow. They don't happen overnight. You have small measures, small steps that build up to a totalitarian state. That is how totalitarianism comes into play. It doesn't happen overnight. It is language. It starts with language and then it moves into smaller actions. And that is how it comes to be. So while we may have seen involuntary commitment, meaning locking up homeless people for being homeless, now they're talking about actually going after people who are talking. So this is before they commit any kind of crime. They may never commit a crime. Pre-crime means that you go and you intervene before the crime happens. And what they're saying is they're actually going to be reporting this to local police. That could go right along with things like red flag laws. Consider that. So those of you out there who believe in the Second Amendment, all of that, just realize that with systems like this in place that are even described themselves, self-described as reporting what they consider a threat to local police. Then you also have previous words of the current administration talking about go after the guns first, grab the guns, then give them a hearing later. Red flag laws, which are pretty much that. Somebody reports someone, they can go after their rights. So, just realize that this doesn't happen in a vacuum. These things, they have a transition. And it's not overnight. So that is a big reason I need to talk about this today. So we need to talk about pre-crime, predictive policing, and how it could turn ugly. And I also want to talk about another story as well. So just think about that. Think about how we're seeing actions happen with people being involuntarily committed. Then we also even had a law that somebody wanted to say that those who are abnormally minded or those who had what they called Trump derangement syndrome, somebody from Montana, I believe the state was, it might have been another M state, but they had a law. They wanted to actually commit people for that. Regardless of where you stand politically, you have to see that this kind of trend is dangerous. To try and actually involuntarily commit people for no crime, it's dangerous. And then, they have not mentioned this. I do want to make clear that Gideon has nothing to do with involuntary commitment at this point in time. But I do see how something like that could happen in the future. And I hope you can understand where I'm coming from on this. So, as mentioned, it's going to scan chat rooms, gaming chats, fringe forums, looking for patterns of, quote, grievance buildup. So, when you have that kind of discussion, and people will have grievances. People have grievances about politicians of all stripes all the time. So, would we want that to actually become something that allows the police to go in people's homes or to detain them or to interrogate them? I don't think people should have their rights taken away, because due process means you get a fair hearing. It means you actually have to commit a crime first, not pre-crime. Have you ever seen Minority Report? Well, in Minority Report, they actually have the movie where Tom Cruise stars, and they arrest him for a future crime. That's just and here's actually, I believe, a screenshot from it. So they actually go after, and this is on a funny website, peterteal.com. I don't know if that's his actual website, but it does give a good breakdown here. They mention it being Palantir quality. Well, funny enough you mention Palantir quality. It's actually got an expanded team of engineers that are ex-Palantir staff. I also want to remind you that the Doge staff were also made up of many Palantir employees, or at least ex-Palantir. So it seems that these are various projects that seem to have people that at least have some form of connection to one another, at least in some instances. Now, who is behind it? Well, it's someone named Aaron Cohen. Now, who's Aaron Cohen? Let's take a look at his biography real quick. So, what is he known for? Well, he's on Fox News a lot, so you'll see him talking about his Precrime platform, where they want to actually analyze people's speech and then go after them for what they say. You know what that means? That means this is a big threat to free speech. But regardless of that, what is Aaron Cohen doing? He's actually somebody who's been involved training law enforcement in the U.S. So a lot of this, I have a lot of critique about military forces. Even the U.S. military. I don't think the U.S. military should be training our police either. But I even more so don't think that a foreign military, especially special forces, should be training U.S. police in tactics. Think about how far we've come since before the war on drugs, which militarized the police forces. The war on terrorism further militarized the police forces. And before all of that happened, before the war on drugs, all of that stuff that militarized the U.S. police forces, have you seen how the police worked with communities back then, before the war on drugs, before we turned war domestically on the domestic population? Yeah, prohibition wars are wars on the population, at least some parts of the population. Obviously, not everybody's involved in crimes of prohibition. But I do have some concern about militaries training police forces how to treat citizens. Militaries are meant to go overseas and to fight true enemies of the military, not to fight domestic citizens and to treat everyone as a potential enemy combatant, which is, to me, how military has to, especially when you're talking about policing, everyone becomes a suspect, especially in this pre-crime. So what that means is, essentially what this Gideon AI does is, it sounds like it puts everyone on the internet under investigation, because that's exactly what it's doing. It's investigating everyone and their conversations online. So my big concern on this, regardless of the military training, history, and everything with the guy behind it, my bigger concern behind all of that is the way it's going to affect free speech. You speak because you believe you have a right to speak. Now, just like Snowden said, if you say you don't believe in privacy because you have nothing to hide, is like saying you don't believe in free speech because you have nothing to say. The way this will affect free speech is a big concern. People speak up because they believe they have the right to speak up. But if they think that everything they say is going to be under investigation by an AI system that has been reported to actually report users online to the local police forces. And who knows what they'll do from there. They may implement the red flag laws from there. We don't really know where it goes. And it's unlikely we're even going to find out what they consider threatening. That's another big concern. It's not open source. And what does that mean? Well, that means you have no idea what they're going to see as a threat. What that means is people are put under further fear of speaking up because they have no idea what's considered threatening and what's considered possible future criminal activity. This is a big concern. And the way it seems that we keep getting further integrated with our police forces and the Israeli military, that's concerning as well. That's concerning as well to me. But, and also Palantir, all of that, which, as we know, they got a huge contract to build profiles on Americans by the current administration. I can't help but bring it up because that's exactly what's happening, and not enough people are talking about it. Not enough people. And I feel like not enough people on YouTube are talking about it. And that's why I decided to do these videos, This is sort of, a form of activism, reporting the concerns with this kind of, transition we're making. Because totalitarianism does not happen overnight. And when you start putting everyone under investigation, every single person on social media, every single person on Reddit, every single person in chat rooms, well, it's not going to go anywhere good, in my opinion. And of course they're saying this is going to stop school shootings, which, come on now. And so it's going to be behavioral Israeli-based ontology, so they're going to have classification frameworks that will map your online expression into predictive categories of potential violence. Who knows? They may even think any video could be, if you're not happy with what they're doing with this stuff, maybe that's enough to get it flagged. Who really knows? So just be aware of this. And I hate to even say that because now, people who are aware of this are likely to change their speech, are likely to second guess themselves. And that is how it threatens free speech. So Aaron Cohen's a big guest on Fox News, and it looks like he's been promoting this for quite a while, talking about how if only we had this putting everyone on the internet under investigation before these school shootings happened, we could have stopped it. At least that's his claim. Not a fan of this. Just wanted to share it with you guys and talk about it. So as it mentions here, AI threat detection or thought crime persecution, I would say. Prosecution means you actually have something happening. I'd hope they don't prosecute you, but it does sound like if you have a thought crime, if they think that you're a threat, which isn't going to be open source, you could be persecuted. Who knows? You could have a red flag thing. And I like to relate it to the involuntary commitment of the homeless because it just shows that you really don't know where the future is heading. You don't. This AI systems, right now it may just go after the most extreme threats, but there is no telling where it will end. And when something is for profit, which most surveillance software is, they tend to want to expand it in order to generate new profit avenues. So don't expect it to end at stopping school events. Let's talk about Florida schools have now introduced armed drones that are going to respond to shootings within seconds. Funny enough, I covered something just like this. If you see this, 3 years ago, I talked about how Axon, it's actually a company that is involved in police body cameras. They actually have a taser drone that they wanted to actually put in schools. So what that would do is keep your kid in line. So if your kid misbehaved, he'd get a little zap. Keep them in line, keep them from misbehaving. I think it's a good thing. Alright, now I'm just kidding there. It's not meant to tase your kids into submission. Not yet, at least. This product is meant to also stop school shootings. They're related. Thought I'd talk about it too. Because we have a much more recent story today. Which we have the actual last week was reported that Florida schools are going to have these armed drones in their schools. That's right. Florida schools are going to have armed drones that can break glass, that can shoot things like pepper balls, they can shoot things like mace, things that so far don't sound that dangerous to children as much. But, there's always a concern about security. What if one of these things could be hijacked? Now, they didn't just say they're putting a couple of them in schools. They're saying they might put up to 90 in some schools. Can you imagine an army of armed drones in schools? My question is, do you really need that many to stop one school shooter? I'm not sure. Now, this one says, created by the company Guardian Angel, Campus Guardian Angel. They said that each one of the boxes will have 6 drones. And I did read one article that said up to 90 in certain schools. Not sure if that's based on having several in each room, or, each classroom may have them, something like that. That's got to be distracting, just seeing that you have armed drones in your classroom. And I can imagine some of the more curious kids may try to hack them. Can you imagine if one of these things got hijacked? And I'm sure they likely can be jammed unless they're using something like, frequency hopping or something, channel hopping. But it's interesting. I was talking about this 3 years ago, and when I talked about it 3 years ago, the ethics board actually had a lot of backlash on it. They weren't really... And my concern is it's not just going to be used against school shooters. I think it is, at the beginning, that's its intended purpose. But just realize that companies that are making these, just like with the pre-crime stuff, they're going to want to expand the market. They're going to want to make more money. So can you imagine in the next 5-10 years, we could have these armed drones all over public streets around the world? And this could be something that is seen to, quote, save lives, always to save lives, but they could be activated for people who are involved in who knows what. And they could pick the wrong target. Can you imagine if the wrong kid got tased or shot with pepper balls, or something else horrible happened? And these kinds of things, if, say, some of them could use various types of shotgun shells, who knows in the future? We don't know what they're going to have. So they could be armed with lethal in the future, especially in public spaces. They'll say it'll save law enforcement lives. That's how it'll be justified, with the armed robots that are going to come in the future. Mark my words. They will be here. Bookmark this video. Check back 5-10 years. We're going to have armed drones on the streets. Not trying to make you paranoid, but I'm just sharing my thoughts on these 2 stories today. So what do you think about this? I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Are you supportive of this? Let me tell you. My first impression is, you know what? I don't think it's such a bad thing to have drones, maybe, in schools. At least to be activated during a school shooting. They could see around corners. They could have, an advantage in that way. I just don't know how I feel about armed drones around all the children. I'm just not so sure. It could be, as it mentions here, a recipe for disaster. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments what you think about this. I want to know your thoughts on the predictive policing, the pre-crime system that's going to analyze everyone's conversation on the public-facing internet. The good news is this is not going to be in your encrypted messenger. It's not going to be in your computer or your phone. It's simply going to be reading the public-facing internet, just like the other bots, the AI bots that scrape the web. So that's the good news on it. So it is just using public posts to try and determine threats. And I also want to know what you think. Do you think this is going to be used to implement things like red flag laws? Do you think it could one day be part of involuntary commitment for possible perceived threats when they say AI gets so accurate that they think it's so good at what it does that they really believe someone would have committed a crime? Do you think that's possible? I do. I actually think there will come a time where they think they have enough data, where they think that they are sure enough that they think they can use these types of systems to possibly commit people. Let me know what you think about it. I want to know if you agree. And I also want to know what you think about armed drones in schools with children. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys, and I'll be back later with more reporting and tutorials on how to protect your security and privacy.